Lately, I've been receiving some really helpful insights about how to use the masculine energy within ourselves to co-create. And I share this from the perspective of a woman who uses her feminine energy to lead when it comes to co-creating in my business, in my life, in my relationships, just all around. I also share this from the perspective of having some both masculine and feminine wounding in the past that I've been working on for the past several years now in different ways, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. So I am just acting as a channel right now, and God is going to give me the message to share with you in this particular video. I really feel like this topic could be an entire course on its own, but we're just going to see what wants to be talked about today. And if this topic resonates with you, do let me know in the comments, because I do respond in terms of what I create and for you based on the responses that I'm given. So let's get into it. I guess the discussion will start from the place of relating to men. And part of me hesitates to even start the conversation there, but this is what I feel intuitively and what God is sort of nudging me to start with. So I'm just going to trust that. And I think there's been a lot of narrative. Something just fell to the ground outside. Interesting. So I think there's been a lot of narrative falling down around us about decentering men and sort of this almost like hatred of men type energy. And while I can see where that is coming from as a collective of women, I also feel that in order for us to objectively use our masculine and feminine energies that are both needed and required to co-create to our highest potential, healing the relationship with our masculine and thus the men in our lives is really going to help with that. And I also realized the last video I posted was talking about how we're done with healing at this stage. So I do share this because right before that insight came in about this new timeline of just pure creativity coming forward for all of us who have been spending such a long, intense period of time just spent healing and from childhood traumas to these wounds of masculine, feminine beliefs and limiting patterns that were sort of like obscuring our authenticity and our most authentic creative essence. So yes, we've spent a lot of time healing that, but I have to share this message like this today because sorry, there are some birds fighting outside. So territorial, very, very masculine energy. We'll get back to that. I'm gonna put a pin in that. So I bring this topic up right now because it was sort of healing my relationship with the masculine and recognizing the connection that it had to the primary male figure in my life, my father, was like the final piece almost of this huge healing puzzle that I have been picking at for the past 9-10 years. And it really felt like when I had this experience, which I will share about in a little bit, when I had this experience with my dad, it felt like closure. That final piece of the puzzle just sort of fell into place, like whatever just fell outside. And it felt like I could actually move forward feeling at peace with the masculine. And also there's a piece about forgiveness that we'll talk about as well, and how we can sort of get around all of the maybe pent up resentments or stories that we've been holding around that. And I say that carefully because I know that, I myself have valid and justifiable reasons to have held this resentment towards men, and I didn't even know, because I've worked on this before, I didn't know how deep that ran. So I just share that to sort of preface what we're going to start with. and then go into some more of like the energetics with masculine energy. There is a crow right outside my window right now. Just flew away. The word territorial kept coming up as I was speaking, and also just like listening to this cacophony of sounds outside. And just it's like this battle between the almost like the masculine and the feminine in this collective consciousness right now. And I really have noticed within myself that it's not so much about trying to like win back territory or power that has been lost to the masculine, at least for me and in my lived experience. It's been more about learning how to make space for both of these energies. And I grew up in a household where it was a very hyper-masculine sort of environment with the structures and the supports and kind of the more masculine energy dominant manifestations were of just like very strict, very rigid, super controlling environment, and quite suppressive, very emotionally absent, often physically absent as well, and just very focused on stability, security, and survival, essentially. It created an environment where I felt very suffocated growing up. Like I could not really express my emotions, where I could not really feel safe at all in my feminine, where I had to lean in towards like the masculine energy side of myself just to also survive in that environment. And I felt like because of all the rigidity and the control, my intuitive feminine side was also suppressed because I was really not given a lot of opportunities to make my own decisions, to learn to trust myself. I was being told what to do, how to do it, and it's sort of like the standards of who I was and what I was supposed to be was already set for me by this structure. And so I learned to kind of associate structure and control and like any sort of force with my experience of the masculine, and it became a very toxic and damaging perspective for me now that I can see, like as I'm 30 now, and I look back on even just last year or like a couple of years ago, the way I was running my business, the way I was interacting with men, the way that things were like overall moving in a positive trajectory. And as I was like healing all these things, I was attracting men who were more available. I was attracting more, I guess, success in my earthly endeavors in some ways, but also I felt like creatively I couldn't sort of shake this feeling like I was like almost missing the mark like every time. And I didn't really understand, because I was like, I'm trying so hard, I'm pouring all of my energy into this, like I literally have no more to give, like I don't understand like why this isn't working. And it wasn't until just I think 2 weekends ago, where I was visiting my family for the Mother's Day weekend, that some things, like final pieces of understanding, like really clicked in for me about healing the masculine and my relationship with my father, and how that's been playing out in all of these different situations I just mentioned. To give you a quick backstory about the situation with like the healing that took place in the relationship with my father, it actually wasn't, I hesitate to even call it a healing, because it was more of a revealing. It was more of a revealing and a total, complete acceptance of the fact that my dad is and always has been emotionally unavailable, emotionally absent, and lacks the emotional intelligence to meet me and love me in that way. And for years I had thought I had understood this about him. And so I went in thinking that, you know, I had a great relationship with my dad because I had already made peace with this part of him. And it turns out that was not completely true, because we had this like final closure moment where we were just sitting all of us at the dinner table. I had no intention to bring up this topic, but it sort of just happened, and before I could even stop it, just like the words came out of my mouth. And so essentially I told my whole family how painful it was to heal the childhood trauma that they had sort of caused. And I don't even like to phrase it that way. I think it's more, I told them about the impact of the childhood trauma that I had and have experienced, and how even as an adult, I'm still dealing with these things, these programmings about perfection, about success, about just the impact of extraction, performance, and overachieving, how that's impacting me now as an adult. And I spoke to how I didn't agree with their parenting styles. It all kind of just came out, and it wasn't in an accusatory way. It was actually just a factual, like, this was my experience, and I think it's important for you to know that as my parents, because my parents, I had like one moment a couple of years ago with my mom where I had mentioned this before, and there were a lot of tears, and she didn't know that it had this impact on me up until that conversation happened. And so she was there, my dad was kind of hearing this for the first time, and it was very interesting to like observe the different responses. My brother was also at the table and would kind of chime in and be like, yeah, like here and there he would kind of add to the fuel, but mostly he was a little disconnected, and everybody was uncomfortable, it seemed like, except for me, because I was just in my truth and had a moment to share about it. I swear, you guys, this was not happening like right before I hit record. I don't know why they're choosing to do this right outside my window, but I guess it's part of the message. Oh, I apologize for the noise. And there we go. Some peace. Okay, so anyways, my dad got immediately very defensive, and he very clearly displayed in this conversation that he was just not capable of holding any sort of emotional truth of mine. I even prefaced it saying that I'm not accusing you of anything. I am not blaming you right now. I'm literally just telling you how I feel, because I think it's important that you know. And he just could not receive it whatsoever. And the effect of this conversation, it felt very almost validating to my younger self, my childhood self, because I was like, well, it now makes sense. It really does make sense why I struggled so much with emotional regulation and getting in touch with my emotions, and just like the entire journey of emotional validation and emotional security that I've kind of worked through and now have cultivated for myself. I was like, well, it makes so much sense now. And I saw it almost as a baseline of where I started. And then I could appreciate this moment now where I'm at, and the fact that I was even able to sit in front of him and just totally unprovoked, like just speak my truth and kind of like be my authentic embodied self, which is not something I could have done even probably 2 years ago with my father, and even just like men in general. So it was a moment that was reflecting back to me just how much I've grown. And so on one hand, I was like, wow, I'm so proud of myself, and I'm so glad that I took all of these years, all of this time and energy pouring in to these places, because I could actually see and recognize now like just how empty that space was after this conversation with my dad. And simultaneously, it actually was like the nail in the coffin moment where I was like, oh, like he is actively showing me who he is. And so I can just accept that. I don't have to continue to try and make him into something he's not. I don't have to continue to wait for him to become who I want him to be so that I can feel loved. Like, no. All of these years, like in intimate relationships and just like relating to the masculine, there has been this theme of waiting on the masculine to rise, to step into that space. To when we see the potential in the masculine as a feminine, we're holding that space for him, seeing the image of him that we know is possible, but it is up to him to step into that space. And it is very dependent on that individual person, and it is a conscious choice that they are making. Even if we may think, oh, this is his pattern, or like this is his trauma, or and if he did not have that, he would be able to do this. But that's the whole problem, is that when we buy someone's potential, we do not see what they are actively presenting to us. And we owe it to ourselves to make our decisions based on what is being shown to us in the present moment, because that is all that we have. That is all that is true. We can make up stories in our head. We can project fantasies of this man or this masculine stepping into the space that we've been patiently, understandingly holding for them, and just like don't want to give up on them. But I'm telling you, because he has not and will not and cannot step into that space, it's actually damaging you more than it is him. And you need to close that space. That's what this conversation with my dad did for me. There was a place in my heart where I was unconsciously saving that space for him, thinking that he was the only person that could fill me with the love or the emotional support and attunement that I needed. And it was from that place in my childhood where I thought there was something, missing about me, or something not good enough, something just always never quite meeting the mark. Like I said, in my business, in my life, the same feeling of not quite meeting the mark, the same feeling was because I was holding this little tiny space in my heart, hoping that one day my dad would step into that space and meet me there. And then I would be whole, and then everything would be perfect. And then I would have the love and the abundance and the life that I had always dreamed of, because I was clinging onto this belief that I was not whole, that I was missing this thing that I needed from him. There was some preparation in my heart already happening that God had put into my life leading up to this moment. But literally when that conversation happened, it was just instant. There was nothing that I even needed to do, but that hole just closed. I was just like, oh, he is displaying his inability to, an unwillingness to step in, and that is a choice that he is making. And similar, I've told myself this in, intimate relationships too, that you can hold that potential, that space for that man to step into it. But if he does not, you can only make your decisions and make your assessments based on what he is showing you. What he shows you, you have to believe about him. Because you're only kidding yourself if you allow your image and your idea of a man to be kind of fluffed up by your own ability to fill in the gaps, right? We're so good at imagining and visualizing and seeing potential and something that is not fully manifested yet. That is a gift of the feminine, that intuitive, visionary ability. And my girl, you are wasting it on men who cannot rise to meet you. And I say this because it was the most peace that I have felt. Of course there was grief because there was all this letting go, but underneath the grief was actually a very deep peace. And that peace was like, oh, I can finally let go. And you know what? That peace was also this relief, knowing that because I'm not holding out for this one person who just cannot fill that space, now I can open myself up to those who can. And I'm talking about this space not being like a literal place where you're not whole, but you know, I'm coming from the place where I now know that God fills all spaces within me and makes me complete. And that because I reflect him, and we all do, that we're already whole, and we don't actually like need anything outside of God. But with that understanding, I think in our earthly life, we still deserve and like need, in a different sense, the experiences, the people that come to us to reflect the wholeness that we already feel on the inside. There's nothing wrong with having a man in your life, okay? There's really nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're unwhole. It doesn't mean that you're, I don't know, disempowering yourself just because you have a partner. Like, no. And love is the nature and essence of God, and intimate relationship, union, is one of the most beautiful and sacred ways that you can experience God's love reflected in intimacy, right? And closeness and true connection. I say that it is actually a feeling of deep peace and relief when you accept that the person or the even thing that you were holding out for in your heart, when you let go of them, that space can be filled by a masculine who actually can and is that. And I gotta tell you, it happened for me. It actually happened for me. A man came into my life just I think a week and a half before this whole thing happened, and I did not realize fully what was going on, of course, like with the energetics, but now I can see that, like, regardless of who this new man, like what role he will play in my life, I don't know that yet. And so far, like what he has shown me is that, like, closing that door in my heart that it was kind of keeping for my dad, closing that and opening it up to receive a masculine who like is all of the things that I have been looking for. It just felt so right. And just like the swapping and the shifting of timelines, like just the parallel and like almost the juxtaposition of the two of them, I was just like, God works in wonderful ways. I sometimes don't understand how this happens, but at the same time, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense that when one door closed, another door was opened, and the person who seemingly like is a really strong reflection of what I have been wanting and desiring from the masculine was like right there, ready to be received. So right after all of this happened, I then went into this theme of forgiveness with the masculine, and I was processing all of this stuff that had just happened on the trip, and then something else happened with this new man, and it was all happening in such close proximity that I was getting frustrated. I was getting frustrated and starting to feel this resentment bubble up with how much I've put up with with the masculine. And of course there was all these like feelings about like, why should I forgive, and if I don't hold on to this resentment, like what power do I have over them, and like what is going to make them want to change. Ultimately, that is what came out when I was being honest with myself about why I was still harboring this anger towards the masculine. And you know, as I said, I have my reasons. I've been hurt plenty of times by men, and not only that, but I've been let down, I've been disappointed, I've been heartbroken. This by the way was the same energetic that I was kind of sensing in my business too, for a little while that I was working through. And it makes sense, right? Like, I think business and relationship are some of, I think, like the most potent mirrors I've ever had in my life. And yeah, you girls who are in both of those things, you will know and understand. Oh my goodness, like sometimes they can be running in parallel to each other and, you know, almost competing for your old patterns and things like that. So yeah, ultimately I had to sit with the idea of forgiving the masculine, and it was not easy. It's still an ongoing process. I started to receive insights and kind of signs about how, as someone who wants to learn to receive more and to not have to work so hard and for things to be more easeful and to really like let myself receive, like that is a dynamic with the masculine energy that is typically seen as like the provider, the giver of supply, whether that is money, whether that is love, whether that is, you know, anything material, right? Receiving is a more feminine trait, right? So I knew that I did have to reconcile with this, because if you're harboring feelings against like the masculine energy, the one who is responsible for giving, and feeling like, oh, you've always let me down, like I was feeling like you're always letting me down, I can't rely on you, you know, it's like hot and cold, sometimes you're great and other times you're absent. It literally the exact same pattern that I experienced with my dad. I came to realize that in order for me to really step into that timeline and this chapter, not even chapter, but literally like rewrite the story of disappointment and never fully being met, I had to forgive my dad. I had to forgive all of the men in the past who have let me down. I had to forgive God for the ways in which I thought that he was not showing up for me, when in reality it was my own perception of separation that was preventing me from receiving what was already there. So I sat with this a lot, and what eventually came out of this time was I was able to let myself have a redemptive experience with the masculine, with this new man that came into my life. And I realized that in order for me to open up to receive the masculine and all things that come with the masculine, I had to be able to, like forgive and repair and give them a chance to make things right. I think I've been so quick to just cut ties. I've been so quick to like turn away from the masculine as soon as there was like any red flag. For me, it's like orange flag. If you're orange flag territory, like you're gone. That's how quick I was to walk away from something that didn't feel good to me. What I've realized is that our human side is always going to be imperfect. We're gonna make mistakes. We're going to fall short. You know, it's gonna be messy human life. And this connects to like my own masculine, my own inner masculine, who was feeling like so much pressure all of the time to perform, to get it right, to always be on, and to never be able to make a mistake, because that was what was modeled to me when I was growing up, and nothing else was really acceptable in my household, which was a really difficult way to grow up. And so my inner masculine, the one who was responsible for going out and achieving and doing and leading and, you know, providing for me, was feeling so burdened, so much pressure from like the feminine part of me. And, you know, there was an experience like a few months ago in my creative process where I was kind of almost doing like parts work with my masculine and feminine, having them talk to each other as I was like in the process of creating things like YouTube videos just for practice, right? And the conversation that happened between them opened my eyes to just how my inner masculine was feeling about the pressure, and similar to the pressure that I was putting on my partners and my dad. Like, all of these men and my inner masculine were feeling like it was impossible to just be valued for being who they are and for the effort that they put in and just for showing up, and they were only being valued by their output and their those external indicators of success. And so the burnout, the lack of results, like all of that was happening as a result of my inner masculine being super out of balance, and just the accumulated effect of having so much pressure and expectation, having to hold that and not wanting to disappoint myself, my inner feminine, other people in my life. And so it was just this like perfect mirror of like what I was expecting from the men in my life was the exact way that my inner masculine was feeling in relationship with me. So I've been working on that the last several months and bringing compassion instead of criticism, bringing patience and understanding as a way of letting it and helping the masculine to rise instead of like tearing him down and being like, where is it? Like, I asked you to do this, or like, why is it taking so long? Like, why hasn't it been done yet? And that's sort of the inner dialogue that's happening, I feel like, when we are, asking the universe or asking God for something and getting into that critical, like anxious, just needy and suffocating place. And it puts a lot of pressure on the masculine energy within ourselves that if it doesn't come, then this other part of me, the feminine part of me, is gonna be disappointed. She's gonna lose respect for me, so these types of things. And what I've learned is that what I've been taught, I should say, is that the masculine wants respect more than anything, while the feminine wants to feel loved. So that's something you can bring into your own dynamic with the masculine and the feminine, as you and play with kind of having them talk to each other, sort of how we do in somatic parts work. I don't have any current practices to guide that right now, but if you have never done parts work, I have some courses with guided practices, like inside of my course Embodied Worth, also inside Listening to Your Body, and the Safe to Be You authenticity practices. I can link those in below, but you can get access to all or most of these for just one price through my membership. So if you want guided practices, that would be the place to go, just to like learn to start having inner dialogue with these different parts of you. I don't always do parts work when I'm working with masculine and feminine energetics, but I do find that when there is something happening that I'm not quite understanding, it is helpful to sort of break it down into like a different sides kind of thing, and it helps me gain some perspective. I think that when we can notice what is happening in our external relationships with men, with the masculine, with masculine structures, especially if you're a business owner and you have, your own systems and structures in place to support your business, and that hasn't really been that supportive or supporting you in the way that you want to see. And even in your relationship with God, especially in your relationship with God and the divine, like these are all places where you can work on and have it reflected back to you what your actual beliefs and views of the masculine are, so that you can transmute those and rewrite those in a way that actually supports what you're trying to create. And your feminine energy will feel really safe and supported properly, so that she has the freedom to flow and just be and to create, while being supported by this masculine structure and being held. It's a whole different feeling when I came into actual connection and understanding compassion for my inner masculine, as well as working on the actual relationships with men in my life and working on my relationship with God, the ultimate divine masculine, in my belief system, like God is mother, father, so it's both masculine and feminine. But yeah, all these different places where you can work on this relationship and this dynamic. And it's honestly a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to play around with this and like see it change your life, see it change your relationships, feel it change how you carry yourself in the world. And also, yeah, what you create as a result of it. It touches every aspect and area of your life. And I really am excited to like keep playing with this dynamic and seeing what unfolds for all of us. So if this is a topic that interests you, if you would like to see some other, like a deeper course or training on this with more, you know, structured guidance and maybe some parts work practice or something like that, just leave me a comment, and I would love to hear from you. So it's been really fun to dig into this topic with you today, and this one's a bit of a longer share than normal, but yeah, I've been really enjoying just having the freedom to create what feels good, and also like playing around with how I can best support myself in the creative process. You might have noticed that I've been kind of like shifting around a little bit and trying different things with YouTube and even my Instagram content. It's been really fun. I've been feeling really good to create, and I think that in itself is just like speaks a lot to the work that I've done like underneath the surface with these masculine and feminine energetics, and how much easier it is to create, how much more enjoyable it is to create, and how much more free I feel just in my body, in my mind. There's literally so many things we could talk about when it comes to co-creation. And yeah, that's all for now. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Mwah.